Hi. The story with the resource API in Angular has received its logical continuation, and already in Angular 19.2 we've got a new type of resource that is designed specifically for fetching data from the server, and it is called HttpResource. Is it replacement for the currently existing HttpClient? How to transform or reshape the data that we receive from the server, or how to debounce HTTP calls when you use the HttpResource? Answers for these and many other questions you will find from this ultimate video guide about HttpResource. If it is your first time on my channel, my name is Dmitry Mozhensky, and my goal is to help you to become advanced Angular developer who understands how things are really working. In the past, I covered a lot of advanced and unique Angular topics, so you can check them out later. But now let's learn more about HttpResource and see how you could use it in your Angular applications. Alright, so let's get started, and for your convenience I split the main part of this video into three parts. In the first part we will cover the basic functionality of the HttpResource, and I'm going to go through this part very quickly because a lot of things are very similar to what I covered in the video about the resource API. But in the second part we will focus more on HttpResource specific features. For example, how to use salt library in order to validate the data you receive from the server, and how to build more advanced HTTP requests. And in a third part I'm going to cover some misconceptions about HttpResource. We will talk about the limitation of this reactive primitive, and I will answer the most popular questions people have about this new HttpResource. So continue watching and let's get started with the first part. And our goal is to build a very simple Angular application that allows me to find certain users by typing the user name into the search field, and the users that match the search criteria should be rendered here in the list. Additionally, we should be able to reload the list of the users. We should be able to add new users to the list. And additionally, I want to have an option to clear the current state and clear the current list of users. So very simple application, and to achieve that we have two signals. The first one is called query, and this signal contains a search string. This is the string that user enters in the search field, and it changes every time when user enters a new value. And the user's signal, currently it contains the empty array, but in the future it will have the real values that we will be fetching from the server. And since we started to talk about that, let's implement the data fetching from the server using the HttpResource. For that, you have to replace the current signal with the HttpResource, which is coming from the Angular common HTTP package. So here we go, and instead of the empty array I currently have, I have to provide a function that returns a certain URL where this data will be fetched. And I actually have a special constant that contains such a URL. This is simply a link to the JSON placeholder that returns array of users, and this is pretty much it. Here we can leave this generic, because in such a way we define what type of data we expect from this URL. So we can actually save this change right now and see that we have an error. This error happened because after this change, the data type of the user's property has changed from signal to so-called HttpResource ref that you can see right here. This data structure represents the current state of the resource, and besides that, it exposes some signal-based API that allows you to read this current state, and also it provides you a set of methods that allow you to manipulate with this state. In a few minutes we will see how to do that. But now, in order to fix our issue, we have to adjust our template and read the value from our current user's resource. And in order to do that, I have to read the value signal from the HttpResource ref. And if I save this change, you can see that my application is back and the users that I received from the server, they were successfully rendered here below. This is really cool, but what about searching? How to trigger the HTTP call with a certain query parameter every time when the value of the search field changes. First of all, we have to append a certain query parameter to our currently existing string. And then we have to additionally concatenate our query signal. And it is as easy as just calling it like that. So now, whenever the value of this signal or any other signal inside this function changes, it will fire a new HTTP call, but with the new query parameter, right? And we can make sure in it if we try to type a new value. For example, let's try to find this user. So I start typing and you can see there were filtered out users that match this search criteria. There are a couple of things I would like to mention immediately. The first one is that you will not get any errors if you provide simply a string as an argument for the HTTP resource. It will work, but the problem is that signals inside your query string, they will not be tracked. So the new HTTP calls will not be fired whenever this signal is changing. So if I try to type anything here, you can see that there is no reaction. So if you want to have everything reactive, what you most probably want to have, you should not forget that it should be a function that returns a certain URL string or the HTTP request. About the HTTP request, we'll talk a little bit later. Another important thing I would like to mention is related to the concurrency mode when you fire multiple HTTP requests one by one. When it happens too fast and the previous request is still pending, the previous request will be cancelled. So by default, HttpResource uses the switch map strategy and cancels the previous request. And this is, as far as I know, at this time, it is not possible to change. So it is baked into the HttpResource. All right. Now let's continue and let's try to improve the UX part of our application. And namely, I would like to notify user about the loading state and show some spinner. And also, in case if something bad happened during the data fetching, I would like to show the error message. So let's solve those issues one by one and let's get started with the loading state. Fortunately, this functionality is built into this resource and we can easily read the loading state from the user's resource, and it has property is loading. So I read the signal, and if it is loading, I'm going to show a spinner that is represented by this material progress bar. All right. So once I save this change, I can simulate the slow 4G network and you could see the loader that appears right here. Okay, so the loading state is working. What about the error handling? This is also can be easily handled by using another if block, and there inside we can read error signal from the user's resource, and in case we have an error, we could show some div with the error message. And if we simulate the offline mode and try to find some certain user, you can see the error happened and we see this error message, which is really, really cool. So next, let's implement quickly the reloading functionality and changing the current user state by adding new user and clearing the state completely. The reloading functionality is built into resource and also obviously into HTTP resource, and the only thing you have to do is to create the click handler, of course, and then take the HTTP resource ref and call the reload method. As easy as that. And once we save this change, we can click reload button and reload the data. All right. And obviously there will be reloaded exactly current state of the resource. For example, if we change it by changing the query string and then reload, then there will be reload the resource with this particular query signal value. You can easily change the value of a certain resource locally, and it is as easy as changing the value for a regular signal. For example, clearing functionality, this is about setting the value of the current resource to a simple array, right? And we can do that by, again, creating the click handler, and then you just take the users and set a new value to whatever you want. In my case, it would be an empty array, and that's it. Once I save this change and click the clear button, you can see that my list was reset to the empty array, so there is nothing to show. Again, if you feel that I explain things too fast, this is because I already covered exactly this use case in the video about resource API. If you want, you can check it out later. There I explain things not so fast and with more details. But let's continue. Sometimes we want to compute the new value for the resource based on the previous value. For example, if we want to add a new user to the list of currently existing ones. For that, we have to use method update, and this is how it would look like. So first of all, we have to provide a handler for the corresponding button, and I have a method add user for that. And let's jump to the implementation of this method. As you can see here, I have some dummy user that I will be adding to the beginning of the currently existing list, and this is the logic that you would need to perform. So you take the reference to the user's resource, call the update method. As an argument, you will get the currently existing users list, and whatever you return from this callback function, it will be the new value for the user's resource. So in my case, I just check if array of users exist, then I just place my new user in the beginning of the list and then just spread all previous users into this new array. Otherwise, I will return a new array with only one user existing, right? So once I save this change and let's try to have the following state of our user's resource, and then I click add button, and this my new user has been added to the beginning of my currently existing list. So this is the end of the first part where we covered the basic functionality of the HTTP resource. And now let's talk about a little bit more advanced and HTTP resource specific features. First of all, you should know that you can provide a second argument for the HTTP resource function, and there you can configure it more specifically. For example, you can define the default value for the HTTP resource. So this value will be used while the initial HTTP call is pending. And another feature that is really important to mention about HTTP resource is the parse function. What this feature is about. So parse, it's supposed to be a function where you can either reshape the raw HTTP response and reshape it into another form, or you can use it for validation purpose to make sure that the data you receive from the server is exactly the type of what you expect. So basically, this is supposed to be a function that receives the raw data that is coming from the server, and whatever this function returns, this will be the final value of the HTTP resource. For example, if I take this dummy user and return things like that, it doesn't matter what server returns, there always will be this dummy user displayed, yeah, and you can see it indeed so. But this is not a useful example, and what is really useful to use here is the schema validation tools like Zot library. Actually, I'm not sure it's Zot or Zot. This library can be easily installed by npm, so you just run npm install Zot and just wait a little bit when the installation is finished, and now you can go and use this library like the following. So first of all, you have to import the following symbol from library, and I would prefer actually rename it to something like that. And here we can describe already the schema for the data we expect. So let's collapse this thing and create a new constant like users schema, and it will have the following shape. So it's going to be an array, right? Because I get array of users, and this array will be represented by objects, and this object should have ID that has type number, right? And it should have a name, of course, name, and it's going to be a string. So here we go. This is the shape of the data I expect from the server. And now we can use the parse method of this schema in order to validate data we received against this schema. So this is how it looked like. So I get the user schema, I call the parse method, and into this parse method I have to provide the raw data that I received from the server. Or we can make it even simpler and shorten it to the following notation. This also should work. Now when I save my change, you can see that everything worked, because parse method throws an error when the data we provide doesn't match the schema. Otherwise, it just returns the input data, and that's it. Another cool thing is that since I use the parse method, the type that comes from the server can be automatically inferred. So I don't have to specify user array explicitly. I can simply remove it, and the type will be inferred from the parse function, and you can see it right here. So I can save this change, and you can see nothing is broken and my application continues working as before. With the only difference is that now I can be sure that I receive from the server the data I actually expect. Now, what if I have to make my HTTP call more complex and provide some additional things like maybe some headers, or what if I want to enable the progress report for this call? This can be done by replacing the URL string by the configuration object, just like this. And this object has one required parameter, this is URL, and it has a lot of secondary parameters that can help you with request configuration. Namely, you can find all available options if you open the declarations, and you have to find the HTTP resource request type. So here it is, and you can see all available options like URL that I already mentioned, method, get, post, delete, patch, etc., body parameter, Params means the query params, right? Headers, you can provide it like the instance of the HTTP headers class, or it might be record, which is actually the normal object with key value pairs, and many other things like report progress if you need, transfer cache, this is needed for server-side rendering. So you can explore all the options on your own, and all these parameters you can define here, like headers could be represented as a following key value pair. So you could have something like authorization header with the value like this one, or in reality you would have something like a signal, right? But this is, I don't have such a functionality, so I will remove it, but at least I hope you have some understanding how it could be configured. In my case, I just leave the URL parameter because I only need this, and you can see it reminds working with configuration object as well. All right, and now it's time to answer some questions about the HTTP resource that you might have at this moment. One of the most popular questions sounds like, if HTTP resource is a replacement for the HTTP client. No, it is not a replacement. You have to think about HTTP resource as a front end for HTTP client. And actually, HTTP resource uses HTTP client under the hood. And I will have a separate video that will be available exclusively for the channel members. And there I will be breaking down the source code of the HTTP resource. And there you will see that HTTP resource is just an abstraction around the HTTP client. And this abstraction exposes the signal-based API in order to read and manipulate the state of the HTTP resource. The next question is if it works with the interceptors. Yes, because HTTP resource uses HTTP client under the hood, all the HTTP client features are working perfectly with HTTP resource. It means that interceptors will be working the tools for unit testing, HTTP calls, and things like that. Then, how to update or mutate data? Well, here things are pretty interesting because despite HTTP resource allows you to perform any kind of HTTP calls, so it can be get, put, post, delete, etc. In fact, HTTP resource is designed only for data fetching and not for the data mutation. So if you have to mutate data, you have to continue using HTTP client, or maybe, I don't know, maybe in the future we will see a dedicated API for data mutation where you can perform post, put, or delete HTTP calls. The next question, is there any practical difference between HTTP client get method and the HTTP resource one? The only difference is that because HTTP client is observable based, its methods like get method, it would be lazy and it doesn't fire HTTP call until you explicitly or implicitly subscribe to it. But HTTP resource fires HTTP call eagerly, immediately when the corresponding component or service is created. Then, is it possible to avoid the immediate invocation of the HTTP resource? Yes, it is possible to control this behavior, and for that you would need to add additional condition in the callback function that you provide as an argument for the HTTP resource, and there you simply return undefined when HTTP call should not be fired, and you return simply a string when it has to be executed. As simple as that. That solution may be not the most elegant, but at least it works. And the last question about throttling for the requests. And this is something that is not supported out of the box yet. Remember, this is still developer preview. Maybe it will be in the future, I don't know. There are workarounds, and one of them you can see right now on your screen, and the idea is pretty simple. You take the signal that you want to debounce and you convert it to observable. Then you apply operators you need, like debounce time, and then you convert this everything back to signal. And then this converted signal will be used in your HTTP resource. And in such a way, you can debounce your requests. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video until the end. I hope this video useful, and if so, please share it with your colleagues and friends, and check out my previous video about resource API. I would highly recommend you to do it right now if you want. Also, if you want to dive in depth for some Angular topics, check out my video courses. I have a couple of them. There I guide you through some advanced topics like Angular forms, and we learn things by investigating a lot the source code. So this is really in-depth course, and links will be in the video description. And of course, join our Discord server where me and 1,500 other Angular developers discuss different Angular topics and just having fun. I wish you a productive week ahead, guys. Stay safe and see you in the next video.